The Minnesota Wild podcast is presented exclusively by Acrisure.
I had your conversations with Kaprizov and Spurgeon.
They were good. They do feel good. So I think we're going to wait, go after, discuss with the trainers, but, cautiously optimistic that they'll be back for tomorrow.
Right. Obviously, rosters rule the roost. I know you don't make those decisions, but clearly Juracek, had a good couple days, but has to probably come out as Spurge is back in.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the things is we want to make sure that, you have the conversations, with the players. Obviously, both went through practice. We had a full practice today. I think it's leaning towards that they are going to be in the lineup. But before we, announce that and solidify that, we do have to have some discussions about if that does happen, then there's going to have to be a roster move.
Yeah.
What's the latest with Brodin and Johansson?
Both are continuing to make progress off the ice right now.
They haven't started.
They have not started skiing yet.
Okay.
How, with Juracek, did you feel like that he showed himself pretty well? I mean, it just, even the national game, it looked like there were some moments where he struggled in his own zone, but cleaned that up in Denver. Yeah,
I think David's coming. I think he's really shown some of his very good attributes. I think that, as you said, you can't teach his size. I think he's got a competitive nature to his game. His ability, I think, to move the puck and see plays and execute. I think his shot has been a factor, and I think you've seen at times, where he's got great offensive instincts and has the ability to make plays. I think like any young defender, when you come in these, so to me, kind of like we've talked about, there's lots of times where you're like, okay, I see it. Then there's other times like any player, I think, plays under pressure on breakouts. That's a difficult task at the NHL level. Sometimes the D zone, the details of, when to go, when not to go, when to hold ice, when not to hold ice. The nice thing is that I think that there's much more positive in seeing him play and play regularly than there are things he needs to work on. But the positive side of that is that I think you have it narrowed down a little bit too. It's not this whole litany of things that he has to continue to work on. Like any player, there's finer points to his game. So I think it's been very positive, and I think he's done a good job for us.
How about your assessment of Liam Ogren? I know he came into camp wanting to fight for that spot, and now he's getting another opportunity to show what he's got.
Yeah, I would say that Ogie seems a little bit more confident in this time around. As we said with a lot of younger players, kind of the more opportunities and different experiences you get, and then you go up and down, and each time you're more ready, more experienced, more familiar with how things go. And I thought that it was a rough game for our team in general, not just a few players, but I think his response to some of the things that we wanted to be better at against Colorado, he was very good at. I thought he was good on the forecheck, good speed. He had made a couple nice plays on the goals. And now you're starting to see him use his natural abilities, but the game's coming more natural to him, like the structural things and what he needs to do in certain situations. There's not as much a hesitation. I think he knows it, and that's why it was nice. It was kind of a tale of two games for him, so that was nice to see.
Did you notice, even just an emotional lift on the practice ice today with Kirill and Spurgeon back in the mix? Just what that does for everybody's morale.
Yeah, I think it certainly helps when you have guys obviously coming back and being part of the practice. And not only the team's excitement, but I also think the players that are coming back from injury, they're glad to be around the guys in the team and be in a practice. And so I think it usually kind of each side fuels each other.
Still, 7 wins in the 12 games without Kirill. John, he's not coming into a situation where he has to be savior and rescue the team. That's advantageous for him, for you, for the team.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think, Kirill's got to come in, and if he does come in, he's got to be able to play to his strengths, and like you said, I think that when guys get out and your team plays, a pretty strong team game, and I think it strengthens the confidence of every individual on the team, which then in turn strengthens the confidence of the team. So, it's important that if those two guys come back, that they come in and they play their roles and play to their identities, but everybody else has to continue to do what they're doing, and then that's when if players come back of the magnitude of those two guys and everybody else continues to play at the level that they've played at, now your team can get stronger, and that's something that I'd like to see.
I know we discussed it. Into his absence, if the team was sputtering Do you think he would have tried to rush back? Like, do you think in hindsight now, like, because the team was doing so well, he was able to get as much time as he did? Would you have seen it going elsewhere where he would have come back a week or two ago? I
don't think so, because he's a driven guy to play, and there were times where he was kind of right at the cusp of pushing it to play, and then it just didn't work out. But I don't think it was a situation in this particular case that it would have changed his timeline on it. I think the timeline has worked out the way it's worked out.
You talked about the film session after the Nashville game and just constructively pointing out some stuff. Are you doing the same now and saying, after that effort, here's what we need to do more of, this is what we need to replicate, that kind of thing?
Correct. Yeah, it's just you're always trying to build, and I think that's one of the mindsets we've had with our team is that's it's not about pointing fingers and yelling and screaming after a bad game and everything's bad. It's areas that we can be better at. But the same thing, I think, after a win at times is that you can show some positives, but there's probably some areas even in those positives. Can we, we did this better than we did in Nashville, and we did this better against Colorado, but here's another layer to it. Can we do this a little bit? We're always kind of, it's more positive than negative, but I think, and I don't think it's really ever negative, but there's times where, things can be increased or done better or crisply or a touch better, and that's what we're looking to do is continue to get better. Whether we win or lose a game, it's always about trying to find the right messages out of the game to move on.
It doesn't win like that. You don't want any regular season loss to hurt too much, but I trust you also don't want to win to overinflate things. But it doesn't win like that kind of puts some wind in the sails going forward.
Yeah, it certainly does. I think just in the way that we did it, I think that sometimes you can, there were some areas, as I said, in Nashville that we didn't necessarily like. And then, some of the things that we talked about as a group were much better. And I think, and they allowed us to be able to play a strong game and win the game. So now how do we continue to build off of that, right? Your game went off the tracks a little bit. You got it back on the tracks. And then today is now about how do we keep it on the tracks and continue to move forward in a positive direction.
You talk about not pointing fingers. Bob Motzko always says you get 3 kicks to the garbage can per season. Do you try and limit yourself to something?
Maybe in college. I don't even get. No, I haven't done that yet, but I have, but not with this group. Maybe the water cooler.
Dump it over.
Yeah.
And the GM gets one time to go looking crazy.
Well, we've survived that this year, so that's good.
For an extraordinary advantage in sports, you need a game plan. For an extraordinary advantage everywhere else, all you need is Acrisure. With a high-tech human approach to insurance, cybersecurity, and more, Acrisure helps you take care of what you care about. That makes winning easy. See what Acrisure's extraordinary advantage can do for you at Acrisure.com.